And we don't really get to witness it as much here as we do in the homes or in the groups and stuff like that, right? And as most of you know, Brian, he came to Step 7. He lived over at the Daystar House for a while, and then and things were going really, really good, really, really good. And he lost touch with the community a little bit, yeah. And went through some trials and stuff, and I think it's really a testament to the fact that when temptation comes a knocking, we got to be real careful not to try to handle it on our own. We need each other, and God has put all of us in this room here together for a reason. And anyway, so some months went by, right? And we were just talking about Matt, and me and Matt were kind of conspiring to try to, like, what's up with Brian? What are we going to do to get him back and all this other stuff? And we kind of knew what was up and stuff, and it was really, really painful to know that somebody we cared about, we've grown to love, was out there and the enemy was having his way with him. And so, we would just pray. We lifted him up in the small groups a lot. And I believe that God heard our prayers, because here he is, right? I do want to share, something that happened, right? So we had kind of, he had made contact, and things had gotten to a point with Brian where something had to give, or else he was probably going to die. Like, literally going to die. Okay, that's how serious this was with him. And, oh man, I remember the first time he called me, he was just like, he was so scared to even talk to me. I felt the shame and the guilt in his voice, and the just uncertainty about, whether or not he was even going to live. And of course I said, Brian, you've got a place at Step 7, man. Come to the groups, do this, do that, I even tried to give him different, responsibilities, like, okay, I need you to go pick this person up so that you can bring them to group, kind of a thing, to get them there, And we were in a small group. Some of the guys were even in there, and Brian came. We were expecting Brian that night, and I had a pretty good feeling he was going to show up. And he came walking in about half an hour late. And I don't know if walking is the right word. He came stumbling in the room, and took everybody back. We could see that he was not in a sober state. Can I even get a little bit deeper with it? I don't know if you can get much deeper than that. Go for it, man. We're sitting there trying to talk about Jesus and trying to have this group. I forgot what the topic was on, what we were talking about. And Brian, he's knocking over cups, and he gets up and he goes over and looks at some books for a minute, and we're just like, looking at him and having a group and all this other stuff. And then he goes into the kitchen, which is right there attached to the little meeting room, and I'm like, Brian, what are you doing? He's like, I need ice. And we're like, what are you talking about? Come sit down. And I think at that moment, a lot of people in that room, and some of the guys have even said this, right? They saw the love of Jesus and the love that Jesus has for each one of us. And they saw that Jesus was never going to let you go. And in seeing that, they knew that Jesus would never let them go. Right? Me and Brian have been talking a lot about the Apostle Peter, and actually, let me back up a little bit. Brian has been to a group every week since that. Okay, except for I think you had a couple where you had to go do something. But he's been a part of that community, and so just the fact that we welcomed him in, even in that state, you guys, the gospel is big enough for everybody in this room, right? And it's up to all of us to show everybody else that, okay? And the fact that the guys in that group that night were able to show him the love he needed for him to come back was absolutely remarkable for me to be able to just sit back and watch, okay? And so the fact that Brian is sitting up here is a huge testament to you guys as well. But me and Brian, we've been talking a lot about the Apostle Peter, and I use him in most every group that we have. I use him as the example because I think we can all relate to being knuckleheads. We can all relate to his kind of is lack of getting it, right? And here's the cool thing, though, is Peter's the first one that Jesus called to be an apostle. He's the first one that Jesus called to be a disciple. And Jesus knew very well that he was going to stray and he was going to do knucklehead things. And so we did some aquatics into this story of Peter, right? And I know for me, I really latch on to Peter, and I believe in Scripture there's so many examples given to us in real people, in real situations, in real circumstances, and we should all find that person that really speaks to us. And I think Brian is starting to see a lot of the resemblance of Peter in your life and how they correlate. And Jesus at the Last Supper said something to Peter that just blows me away. We haven't really discussed this yet. But at the Last Supper, Peter's talking about, man, I'm gonna do all this for you. I'll never leave your side, all this other stuff. And Jesus says this, Simon, Simon, which is Peter. He says, Satan has asked to sift each of you like wheat. You see, Satan, the enemy, has to ask Jesus for permission. Right? And when you came into that group, we all saw that Jesus wasn't going to let you go. Right? He wasn't going to let you go no matter how hard you may have tried to be like, Jesus, just let me go. Right? He wasn't going to do that. And this is where it gets really good. He says, but I have pleaded in prayer for you. It says Simon here, but you might as well say Brian. It says, I have pleaded in prayer for you, Brian, that your faith should not fail. So when you have repented and turned to me again. Amen. See, Peter hadn't quite gone to the place of denying Jesus 3 times yet. That was going to happen later on that night. And so Jesus is saying, hey, this is going to happen, but it's cool because when you do come back to me again, because your faith will not fail, because I've been praying to the Father for you, right? He says this. He says, strengthen your brothers. This is a really special one for me, you guys. Brian has become a dear friend to me. And he's proof positive that God does exist. And that God is huge. And that there's nothing we can do to screw that up. And, he's already, you can ask the guys at Ethos, he's already missed out there. We're already like, dude, where'd you go? Right? Because just the unity you bring into wherever you are is amazing. Dude, I'm so proud of you. And, I can't wait to see what happens over at Daystar. I'm already hearing really good things. It's amazing how just one spirit can turn something around so quickly. And you've already done that in less than a week of being over at your new house. That speaks volumes of your character, of your heart, of who you are as a person. That's truth, right? All this other stuff that we worry about, that we fear, that we, get into our heads about, that's not true. That's lies, dude. So grasp onto those truths, bro, and be the man you were created to be. All right? Thank you. Pastor.
Wow, Brian, that's kind of tough to follow. I love it when we have someone graduate from Ethos. I'm always so thankful. It's a wonderful way to prepare the pulpit. And I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for the relationship I see here. Brian, I'm thankful to you for the way you have mentored Brian. I've heard Brian on more than a few occasions. We talk a lot about what we're thankful around here. And Brian will say, I'm thankful for Mr. Lane. And I appreciate that. And I look back, Brian, to when you first came to Step 7. And I said to myself that the Lord has a special plan for you. And I believe that even when you left and slipped, I believed he was going to bring you back, which he did. A couple weeks ago, I was getting ready to preach, and I looked out on the crowd, and I saw you, and I saw Matt. I saw some guys that had been here and come back, and I'm thankful for the miracles that take place here That's step 7. But Brian, the Lord does have a very special plan for you, which makes me, I was thinking earlier about some verses here. This is out of Jeremiah 29. And he writes, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Brian. He says, "Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you." And then verse 13, and this is the big, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart." And I believe that's where you're at right now, Brian. It's not some of my heart. It's not most of my heart. I believe you're at a place where it's all of my heart. And I thank you for what you've meant to the ministry. And I look forward to working with you and seeing what the Lord has in plans for you. Okay, buddy?
Thank you.
Love you, man.
Love you too. No, you gotta talk now, dude. I've been talking for 90 days, man. I'm usually just so full of words, and it's hard to say exactly what gratitude is today, because there aren't enough words to describe it. There's just not. August 6th, I called you. And, I was broken. Literally broken. And, excuse me. And you picked up the phone. Which you didn't have to. And you picked up the phone. And, you said, absolutely. You said, absolutely, Brian. You are always welcome in this ministry. But, you're coming to Ethos. And I said, yeah, I'm coming to Ethos. No questions, no anything. I think I called you a couple days later. I said, what do I need to bring? You said nothing. You said, you bring some clothes, and that's it. And I looked around my room. I looked around the apartment, this lonely place that I'd been. I'm like, how can I give all this stuff up? You're like, that stuff hasn't really been working out too well for you, has it? No, it hasn't. Bring a bag, some clothes. I'm like, food? No, don't worry about food. No. So, so then on August 11th, on my birthday, I go. My parents drop me off. And my mom says it's the best birthday gift you will ever give yourself. And of course, at the time, I'm like, not now. Not now. I don't want to hear that right now. 100 days later, clean, sober, it's the best damn birthday gift that I ever gave myself. So, for me, the discipleship class was part of Ethos. I know some guys have gone through discipleship course outside of Ethos, and I think that's awesome. And I highly recommend, guys, if you haven't done the discipleship course, you have to do the discipleship course. But for me, my journey, as Bruce says, my adventure in this life included Ethos. And so they're going to go hand in hand forever. And, on that Sunday when I got there, Wednesday is discipleship course, and you said, you don't have to do it this week, you can do it next week, but it was on prayer. And I said, I think I need a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And I did. So, I got it done, and I got it done by Wednesday. And I'll get to real quick. I know, Pastor.
You got 18 minutes.
You're good. Way too much. But anyways, the studying was occurring. It was prayer. And the first thing I wrote down, as I was reading some of the scriptures was, my prayer life is not existent. It's shallow. It is, and that was the point where I realized that, I had turned my back on God, but God had never turned his back on me. And I said, I got to strike out this relationship through prayer again. And so I started. Very proper, hands folded, on my knees, very respectful. But I still wasn't getting it. And I still wasn't getting it. And I would run into guys like Brett. I would run into, so many of you guys. Matt's not here. Matt, throughout my entire time, Matt was there by my side.
And he did the best thing that anyone has ever done, except for my parents and except for Chris and Mabry, because they did it too. He said, don't call me unless you are ready to have God take control of your life. So, my heart is with Matt right now, because he saved my life, and, it hurts that he's back there, but anyways. So, but guys will come up to me and be like, just keep studying. Never said read the Bible. He said study the Bible, okay? Keep studying the Bible. And sooner or later, words are going to speak to you. And it finally happened in commitment. And Proverbs 3:5, man. I mean, trust the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Like, I have carried that since that day forward. Every morning I wake up and I say, trust in the Lord with all my heart. Lean not on my own understanding. Because, you know what? I don't know why I got here. And you told me to stop asking why. I don't know why I'm here. But you told me on day one, going into Ethos, is that, this isn't just about you. God brought you here for us too. And, that stuck with me. And how I've been able to transform through the discipleship and through Ethos and become, other-centered. Even when I was going to different treatment centers and even last year, like I would give guys rides, and I would do stuff for the ministry, but I wasn't doing it with an open heart. I was doing it so I would get blessed. I was doing it selfishly. And I can honestly say now that I'm not. Like, what I do for these guys is nothing. It's nothing compared to what I get back in return. Amen. It's just not. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll kind of just real quick. Brian he's challenged me. He has told me and showed me how to look at life in a completely different manner. He's like, you know what? He's like, I hear you talk a lot about your family and how selfish you were. And you said something that, I got to share, because we were in small group one time, and you point blank looked at me and you said, you don't value your family.
Lots of truth, not so much grace.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Hard to have both. But you're like, no. You're like, you talk like you value your family. But you were willing to use drugs and alcohol, completely negate them from your life. Like, how is that right? And so from that day forward, I wrote a values list. And I can attest to everybody here in front of God that I will do absolutely anything I can to protect those values now.
Amen.
And I don't know, man, there's so many profound moments. But the best is the chair. The chair. Day 2, I'm at Ethos. And I don't push the chair in all the way. Brian comes down and he's like, very nicely, he said, cosmetically it's just better if that chair is pushed. And the guys know Brian. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty nice, because I've seen Brian the other way, because I've been here for almost a year, right, in the program somehow. And it's amazing, guys, especially where's Jeremy? Hey, so you're the newest at Ethos right now, right? There's going to be another new guy that's going to come in, right? What I have learned about simply putting a chair where it belongs has made me realize that I am right where I need to be because I belong. It's not just about the cosmetics. It's not just about everything needing a place in Ethos. It's about respect for each other. That's right. I've learned lifelong lessons over a freaking fork. I really have. I've learned lifelong lessons over respect for doing simple things around the house. And, I got to apologize, because I'm just going to kind of end it with 2 things. One is, ethos. I think the thing that reminds me of ethos the most starts in Romans 5, verse 3, a little bit past verse 3. We take joy, we take glory in our suffering. Because suffering creates, as we know, perseverance, character, and character hope. If you let it, ethos will do that. It will take your suffering. It will make you persevere. If you want to, the door's always open, you can leave. But I suggest that you don't. Stick around for a minute or two. Character, something I've just been longing for and have not had. And I'm really searching for it. And then hope, of course. So, I can honestly sit here and say that I'm sorry. But sorry doesn't necessarily, I think, encompass what I truly feel. I was wrong. I was wrong. With that said, I don't like the man I was. I'm okay with the man I am today.
Amen.
And I freaking love the person that I'm trying to become.
Awesome.
Love you, Brian.
So, thanks, guys.
Amen.
Amen.